Vikas Khemani is now joining us, founder of Carnelian Asset Management. Vikas, morning. Thanks so much for your time. Vikas, I'd like to talk to today's discussion to start with defense space. I was looking slightly deeper, and one found that though, say, half a dozen of the top of the mind defense stocks may have run up a whole lot in the last few quarters, but one can divide the defense space into service providers around defense and the real manufacturing companies which are manufacturing deep tech, high value added kind of parts and the play, not only for domestic but overseas too. Which end of the defense are you bullish on, and do you think that the low hanging fruit in defense may have gone, but one can still work around them?
I think Ajay, defense is no doubt a big opportunity, but given the nature of the opportunity, it is going to play out over a long period of time. The challenge in defense right now is that a lot of future growth, future opportunities are already factored into the pricing of many companies. Companies are trading, at a crazy valuation. So in that sense, one has to be very careful and cautious. And we have seen from our experiences in the past that while things look good, but growth don't come, in a just one way. It takes its own time. So there will be periods of consolidation. We have seen that in many sectors. Like I think chemical in 21 was like sector which could nothing go wrong. In 22 we saw correction happening. So I think while we believe in the long term opportunity, but there should be one should be very careful. One should have to look at on the company fundamental opportunity space which is operating into it, competitive intensity, and of course lastly the valuation of the company, right? So we look at all those things, and only if the risk reward makes sense one should buy. Otherwise one should be very careful.
Point taken, and you've been quite positive, Vikas, on the pharma space as well. Not sure of your bet on Loris, but at least Orchid Pharma has turned out really well, especially after that got the European approval as well. Within pharma, are you looking at expanding your presence?
We have a fairly large overweight on pharma. If I remember correctly, in different front, but we have like upwards of 20% weight in someone in pharma and API space. So I think we are very well positioned, and of course we keep looking at never say no. We keep looking at opportunities all the time, and but yeah, we are quite bullish and optimistic and overweight in pharma as a basket.
When it comes to IT, would the preference tilt towards mid-cap IT versus the large caps?
Again, we really don't look at mid cap versus large cap. When we look at really the growth, and like we have discussed in the past, that in every cycle there are companies which go through a transitionary phase and become go into the next orbit. And I think this cycle also will have many companies which will go from small cap to mid cap to large cap. So our idea is to look at those companies which are well placed to get this transformation or transitionary phase where they can become big, and there could be mid caps in that, there could be small caps in that, and sector we are quite positive, and of course we have been quite heavy overweight on IT mid caps, but that's just I mean we don't really decide based on the market cap criteria. Only we do decide based on the business model and the growth profile and quality of the management of the company.
Vikas, you've been observing a lot of commentary lately coming out from our policy makers, be it finance minister at the budget. People have got into the habit of, or we are used to taking vote on account as a complete non-event. But there was two big surprises coming out. One was lower borrowing number, and of course fiscal deficit number, which did play a big part in this commentary. Then there's a question that we are, the government is now looking at the next generation of reforms. There has been a talk from the Prime Minister himself around it. What could those new generation reforms be in your view? We've seen slew of reforms already in the 9 years. Will we have more of the existing ones, or there could be some aces up their sleeve, new ones?
Sure, see, it's not that we have kind of done everything done and dusted. Right now, I think what has been done is to build strong foundational reforms without which we could not have even dreamt to achieve 6-7% growth. Whether that was a banking sector reform to RERA to IBC to tax reforms, I think all of them are in place. So they are kind of making things well. But I think if you ask me, judicial reform is a very big pending area, which I think has been wanting. If we want to become a global center, we need to have judiciary reform, which is quite pending for quite some time. Likewise, I think what we need to do on the skill training or skill development side, while there's a lot has been done, but I think we have miles to go on that. How do you make large population of the country productive and effective? So I think which I think also gets linked to the educational reform, which government has been talking about. There's a capacity building which needs to happen both in education and healthcare, and we might think that is a narrow focused on those segments, but they have a huge transformational impact on the overall productivity of the company. For example, I would give you the fast tag, which seemingly appears to be a very small reform, but it's a very big reform in terms of improving the logistics cost of the country, right? So we don't realize how small things have a large impact on the overall. Now, nobody would have, kind of said fast tag as a reform, but to my mind, it's a very big reform. It's a reform of mindset. It's a reform of kind of taking smaller things and making a big impact. Same way, I think healthcare and education reforms are a very big, looks like smaller reform and narrow reform, but they're actually very big overarching reform. So I think they will touch upon, in my opinion, building the capacity, improving the productivity. Of course, infrastructure, a lot of reforms are pending, and we need to build the next level of infrastructure, which it's underway, but I think it can be definitely be much more than what we need to be if we want to be, Viksit Bharat, and we need to have manufacturing picking up. If we need to have, $30 trillion GDP by 2047. So all those things, in my opinion, you will see a lot more happening in next 5 years.
So yes, judicial reforms, the skilling part of it, of course, there is, we are wanting for more as far as the reforms are concerned. But because for the PSU pack as a whole, is there a FOMO feeling in terms of missing out, whether railways or whether, the PSU banks and OMCs for that matter as well?
I think former feeling comes to guys who have not invested. We have been participating in the PSU, so we've been invested, in PSU stocks, especially PSU banks. We own BHL, we own HL. So I think we participated, and we really don't look at anything as a PSU or non-PSU. We look at wherever there's a transformation happening, especially, we take care, and we like where there's a governance is in place, a business model is in place and evaluations are in place. And in many of the PSUs, most people have missed out a very big change in the governance part. And people who looked at PSU governance with the historical lenses have missed out. And I still see a lot of investors, just reject PSU. No, we don't invest into PSU. The thing is that when the country is going transformation, the government's mindset is transformative in every area of this thing. When the Prime Minister himself has said, or in fact, why he has said, we can see, witness in the every action of them. They are giving freedom to the PSUs. They are giving enabling environment to the PSUs to go and make them, like in banking, all the CEOs of the banks, PSU banks are given free environment. No more calls come from ministry to lend to somebody else. So they are being allowed to operate, independently. So that was a historical problem. So if it's happening, then why would any PSU bank trade at significant discount to any private sector bank? And our biggest call has been that this bridging of the gap will create biggest value. And still we don't find there's a huge, still there's a lot of value on the table if you look at in most of the PSU banks. So I think that's the job of an investor to kind of look where market is not looking, but there's a big change happening. And I think PSU still is, looking good.
Thanks so much, Vikas, for joining in and sharing with us your outlook, the sectoral preference, and of course, the criteria to looking at investments in this market.
Thank you.